I think back to the lead up towards Pokémon X and Y and look at it really fondly. Being the first games on the 3DS and the first Pokémon games in full 3D was already a big deal. But then we add in the introduction of the Fairy type, the first new Pokémon type in over a decade. Then we throw in Mega Evolutions, and Pokémon X and Y wasn't just feeling like another set of new Pokémon games. In many ways it was feeling like a little bit of an overhaul of what the series was. But it's been over 10 years since these games released, and the Pokémon series has gone through a lot since then. Some of it good, a lot of it bad, and people point to X and Y as the start of this. Let's not mince words, it's mostly been a decline. Now, I've been a long time defender of Pokémon X and Y. I don't think they're the best games in the series by far, but I don't think they're as bad as people make them out to be. However, it has been about 10 years since I last played them. So with the recent launch of PokémonLegendsZ-A, I figured now seems like a better time than any to go back and replay them for a bit of a retrospective. I have fond memories of these games, but how much of that is actually because the games are good, and how much of it is just nostalgia? Well, I guess we're about to find that out, aren't we? Pokémon X and Y start off like most Pokémon games. You've just moved to a small town in a new region with your mother, you wake up and you begin an adventure. One thing that was kind of huge for long-time fans of the series here was that, for the first time, your mum has her own room and bed instead of it just kind of being left up to interpretation. She also has a little bit of a backstory too, being a famous Rhyhorn rider. You even have one as a pet in the front garden that says goodbye to you when you leave. And speaking of leaving, as soon as I open the front door into Vanderbilt Town, I'm greeted by Shauna and Serena. If I'd have picked the female protagonist, I'd have been greeted with Shauna and Calum. They introduce themselves to us, and then they just immediately invite us onto an adventure. So I guess that means it's time to get our first Pokemon. But first we have to meet up with the rest of the friend group in the next town over, which may as well not even be a separate town. Route 1 is between them, but it's just an empty straight line. There's nothing here, there's nothing going on, it's just a fun camera angle. Aquacord Town itself though is quite nice. I really like the fountain in the centre, the bridge going towards the next route. There are some shops on the side, but there's not really anything interesting going on here, but that's fine. This is essentially the first place in the game. We're basically still in Pallet Town. So I sit down with the full friend group, get myself a Fennekin, tell my friends to call me subscribe for the entire game, as a reminder, and then immediately battle Shauna with her chest pin. Yet not the starter that we're weak against this time. We do battle against that, but that comes later. But I do appreciate that we do get to fight both of them. I also just really like all the starter designs in X and Y. It's not the best batch of starters, but it definitely isn't the worst. And Fennekin is honestly one of my favourites. Plus, it's nice that you get it so quickly. This is like maybe 3 minutes into the playthrough at this point. And already I'm saying goodbye to my mother and setting off on the adventure. I really don't understand why so many of the more recent Pokemon games have been so hesitant to just let you go on your adventure as soon as you can. Like, this just works so much better. Now I get to play the game. So, yeah, let's go do that. Immediately after starting off on the journey, there's the typical catching tutorial. It's as slow and boring as ever, there's not really anything new to add. But I did use my newfound catching skills to grab a fletchling, whom I named Clive. Yeah, I started off messing around with the theme of RPG characters for nicknames, like naming my Fennekin Shulk. But to be honest, it just wasn't really working for me, so I abandoned it not too long into the playthrough. Also, this fletchling is a girl. but that's fine, I guess. Clive Rossfield is baby girl anyway. Progressing through Route 2, we eventually enter Viridian Santaloon Forest, and here we get something that I really wish there was more of in X and Y. After leaving town to go on an adventure with your friend group, you actually get to explore Santaloon Forest as a group, and as you progress through the forest, your friend group all does the same, making comments on what they find, healing your Pokemon, and just generally being present and active in the world. It's nice, it helps it feel like an adventure with your friends. But this is the only part of the game that does anything like this. Almost every other time that your friends show up, it's for static cutscenes or just a few battles. And those static cutscenes are very static. Characters just don't have idle animations, so they all feel lifeless, especially when the camera gets up close. Weirdly enough, it reminds me of that one scene in King of Queens where Patton Oswalt just stands still in the middle of the set, except that's every character in the game. Anywho, I caught some Pokemon to fill up my team, Pikachu named Lightning, Scatterbug named Leto, and Bunnelby named Sabin, all before eventually arriving at Santaloon City. And I quite like Santaloon City. It has a nice, quaint, small town vibe. There's some cafes with outdoor seating. It's also where we find our very first boutique, which lets us customise our character's clothing. Character customization was actually a really big deal at the time. It's something that Pokemon fans had been clamouring for years, and what's here is fairly good, but it really isn't perfect. I think the biggest issue it has is that, just like in real life, men's options are severely limited. If you pick the female character, you just have so many more options for character customization, whereas the male character doesn't really have a whole lot. It's just some t-shirts, some jackets, shorts and jeans, and that's it. I guess you've got hats as well. I also don't like that you can't take your hat off. I don't like hats, but yeah, it's just almost good, is how I would describe it. Whilst exploring the city, I find that the north exit is blocked by the gym leader's sister, of all people. But I can still explore Route 22 on the side, which has the new Pokemon Litleo for me to catch. It's a normal fire type, it took me an hour to find, and I did not use it once in the entire playthrough. Anyway, that's enough faffing around, let's just go battle the gym leader. However, before I can even enter the gym, I'm given a pair of roller skates by someone who's just leaving. These let us get around faster, but they also control kind of weird. From this point on, any movement on the analog circle pad will be with the roller skates, which control way too fast for most of the game's areas. If I want to just walk around on foot, I have to use the D-pad, but then I'm limited to the typical gridded movement. I don't really like this control scheme. It's not game ruining, and for a lot of indoor areas like gyms, it controls how it has done thus far. It's just odd. Inside the gym, there's this cobweb, not really a maze, but I think the game wants you to think it's a maze. There are also some trainers to fight, but there isn't really a lot to this. It's the first gym, so it's fine for it to be simple. Viola uses bug-type Pokemon, Surskit and Vivian, but Lightning made this fight trivial with electric-type moves, so I just grab the badge, go back to where her sister was blocking me earlier, and still get blocked again. But this time, it's so that she can give me the EXP share. This is a big source of contention for Pokemon fans. In previous games, the XP share was a hold item that you would give to one of your Pokemon, and they would then earn half the XP earned from a battle, even if it didn't participate. But now it's a key item that shares experience across the whole team. It makes the game a lot smoother and a lot easier, but arguably too easy. At the very least, though, you can turn it off, so if it is making the game too easy for you, you can just get rid of it. So that's what I would call the end of the introduction to X and Y, and what do I think at this point so far? I guess it's fine. It's not the strongest opening Pokemon's had, but it isn't terrible. I like how quickly you get your Pokemon. There's a good variety of Pokemon types to catch early on, but there's also not really anything interesting happening. It's just a perfectly cromulent opening. But now, it's time to head to Lumio City, the big city of Kalos, the centre of a lot of X and Y's marketing, big enough even to be the entire focus of its own game. But we have to get there first. Along the road to Lumios, I captured a Flabebe and named it Ellie, before adding it to the team as my main fairy type. It's the first game with fairy types, so it'd be weird to not have one on the team. This route doesn't really have a whole lot going on aside from this nice looking fountain. There are some hedge mazes on the side, there's some trainers to battle, items, wild Pokemon, but all of that's optional. You can just make a beeline straight through the centre to get right to the city. Upon reaching the gate to Lumios, we actually meet some of Professor Sycamore's assistants, and they offer to guide us to Sycamore's lab. You don't have to follow them straight away though, which is nice, but at the same time, there really isn't anything to explore in Lumios right now. All we have access to is a single street with a Pokemon Center and a cafe. All the other streets are apparently having power issues, which I guess makes for a convenient roadblock. For now, all we can really do is walk around and admire the camera angles, which don't really go well with how the game controls. So I guess I'm just heading straight to Sycamore's lab. So first of all, Professor Sycamore is kinda hot. Probably the hottest of all the male professors we've had. Once we meet him, we battle his team of Kanto starters, and once we do beat him, we get to pick one of them, including its Megastone. I decided on Bulbasaur for this playthrough. I normally pick Charmander, but I already had a fire type, so I didn't want to have two on the team. Getting to choose another batch of starter Pokemon is genuinely very cool, but it's also a large, very large signpost of what's to come. X and Y were the start of what many people call Kanto pandering. A lot was done to appeal to people's nostalgia for the first Pokemon games, and a lot of this from Game Freak was largely fueled by the negative response people had to Pokemon Black and White when they came out and had very, very few older Pokemon available in them. Honestly, I think some of the Kanto pandering is fine, but it definitely goes overboard, especially in some of the later games in the series. Before leaving, Professor Sycamore gives us the task of learning about Mega Evolution, even though I'm pretty sure that's his job. I guess Kalos just has really vague child labour laws. On the way out of the lab, we also meet Lysander, who doesn't really say anything of note. He just kind of waxes poetic about how he wants the world to be beautiful, but he says it in a weird and vague way that could really mean anything. And we can't even escape him because we go to meet with our rival at a nearby cafe, and he's there again, but now he's being weird and creepy to this woman, telling her how he wants to make her beautiful forever and how she'll grow old and ugly if he doesn't. Like, just really weird, creepy shit. We also find out here that Lysander owns the company that make the Holocasters, which basically act as the phones in X and Y. It's how all your friends contact you when you're not together in person. So Lysander is stupid rich, kind of a creep. Suspicious. Anyway, after Lysander disappears from reality while still on screen, the person he was just being really weird to walks over and introduces herself to us as Diantha. Turns out she's a famous actor, and that's like it. That's like her entire character. And before you ask, no, that is never relevant. Ever. In the whole game. And once she leaves, our rival asks if we can battle them. Not now, just, at some point, eventually, just not now, which just kind of feels weird. Okay, I guess. Anyway, now it's time to move on to Route 5. Immediately upon entering Route 5, we bump into Karina, one of the gym leaders that we'll be battering later, along with her 2 Lucario. One of them even seems to be taking a liking to me. I'm sure that means nothing though. Route 5 is also where we get the first introduction to Horde battles. That is assuming that you use the honey that Trevor, another member of the friend group, gives you. Horde battles are a genuinely cool feature that I'm actually quite sad never returned. It's just a standard wild encounter, but instead of fighting against one Pokemon, you're battling against a group of 5. These are great for EV training, shiny hunting, and even have a few exclusive encounters. And you can trigger a Horde battle just by using the move Sweet Scent or a jar of honey outside of battle. It's really easy to do. It's just really weird that the tutorial for them doesn't actually feature them. But you do battle Tierno and his Corphish here. I haven't really brought up Trevor and Tierno yet. They're the 2 members of the friend group whom you probably interact with the most. They're also complete nothing characters. Trevor is a nerd. Tierno likes to dance. Yeah, that's it. That's their entire characters. They're easily, despite being the members you interact with the most, the worst members of the friend group. And it isn't even close. Shortly moving on, I reach Camphria Town and visit their local castle, which I've been told has some information about Mega Evolution. They don't know about Mega Evolution, but the townsfolk do tell me stories of a war that seems to have happened around 3,000 years ago. How intriguing. Carrying on the adventure, we head west towards the coast, only to find the path is blocked by more Kanto pandering. And in order to get it to move out of the way, we'll have to visit the other, richer and cooler castle nearby to grab their Pokéflute to wake the Snorlax up. This castle is a bit more interesting. We have to battle some trainers along the way there with this really nice looking battle arena with the trees hanging overhead. Then we have to do this annoying puzzle with Shauna to catch the castle owner's Furfrou. The whole area is huge, and after you've retrieved the Furfrou, you're treated to a fireworks show with Shauna. So with that all done, the castle owner, who is honestly a bit of a capitalist idiot, the game makes a point to show you how much of an idiot he is, and how much of a capitalist he is. But he gives us the Pokéflute, so it's all good. So we leave the castle, this time going through the side exit, which means I get to catch a Honedge, which I named Numa, and then I just remove Snorlax from the path of the Pokéflute, give the Pokéflute back to its original owner, which it turns out was from the first castle. The big castle just took the Pokéflute one day and never gave it back. And now we get to carry on. There's still a long way to go to the next gym. First we have another battle against Trevor and Tierno, but this time it's a double battle with Serena. I actually kind of like this element with all the friends all battling each other on occasion. Unfortunately, this is the only time anything like this actually happens. Next I make my way through Connecting Cave, which is just a short, straight line. I don't even get any random encounters in here, But as soon as I emerge, I find myself on the cliff tops on Route 8, the first area of coastal Kalos. Yeah, the Pokédex in X and Y is split into 3 different Pokédexes. You've got Central, which is where we started, Coastal, where we are now, and Mountain, where we'll visit later. I guess maybe Game Freak thought this would be easier to organise, but it doesn't really mean much in the grand scheme of things. Moving along the cliffside, we eventually reach Ambret Town, home of the Fossil Lab, and an aquarium where we get the Old Rod. At the Fossil Lab, we're told that the lead scientist has gone to Glittering Cave to do some research, so I guess we're now heading there to reach him. This is also where we encounter another hugely requested feature that was added in these games, Pokémon riding. You have to ride this conveniently located Rhyhorn here to traverse along the rocky terrain and destroy boulders along the path. It's slow, it's clunky, it doesn't really add anything, it just kind of looks cool, and this is really the same for the few other times that you get to ride Pokemon. It could have replaced HMs, hell it does in future games, but it doesn't do that here. X and Y still have HMs. They're heavily de-emphasised, but they're still here, and that comes with its own problems, which I'll get into later. Whilst exploring Route 9, I did also catch a Helioptile, which I named Hero and replaced my Pikachu with. Mostly because I wanted to focus on catching and using new Pokemon in this playthrough. Plus, look at him. He's just a fun little guy, and I love him. At the end of Route 9 we enter Glittering Cave, where we're treated to more over-the-shoulder camera angles. This controls a bit better than it does in Lumio City though, but a lot of that is down to how restricted everything is. The entire path is a single tile wide, it's very linear, and also you're locked to the grid-based movements for this entire section. But it's also just for this first room, so it doesn't really last for too long before we go back to the more traditional, conventional display and control scheme. In the second half of Glittering Cave, we get our introduction to X and Y's villain team, Team Flare. But also, we get an introduction to their top tier battle music. Team Flare are just kind of here for fossils or some shit. It's not really explained. The scientists we're here for didn't even realise that they were here. Serena did though. In fact, she even teamed up with me to help clear them out. As a reward for coming to help the scientist though, he does let us pick one of the Kalos fossil Pokemon. I picked Tyrant because Amora is just useless. It has a good design, but its typing and stats are just not good. Leaving the fossil research lab, we then head back through the aquarium, this time emerging once again on Route 8, but this time we're along the beach at the bottom of the cliff. I think this is a nice little detail. It's fun being on the same route, but at the same time in 2 completely separate areas. It's a nice little touch. I think the only thing I don't really like about the beach area is that there's not really any wild Pokemon unless you're surfing, which we don't have access to yet. There are a lot of trainers though, so it's not like this is completely empty. Moving north along the beach eventually takes me to Silage City, where we'll find the second gym leader. But the first place I visit here is the bike shop. You don't really have to do anything to get a bike here, it's just answer 3 incredibly easy questions. But that's fine, the bike is always nice to have. In this game it's a standard Pokemon bike, there's no Acro bike or Mac bike, but now we do have the benefits of analog control. And this makes the bikes a lot easier to control in general. Plus, in my opinion, X and Y has the best bike music in the whole series. Silage City as a whole though isn't really much of a city. Its biggest feature is the cliffside that we can walk up, which is where we meet the gym leader, Grant. And we also find the gym here embedded into the cliff itself, which is a nice touch. Grant himself is a rock-type gym leader, and the gym's theme is a rock climbing area, and it all comes together in a really nice cohesion. The rock climbing arena isn't a very complex gimmick, but it is a very fitting one, and it makes for some nice visual variety as well. This environment genuinely looks fantastic. When we finally get to battle Grant, he just uses both of the Kalos fossil Pokemon. I would have liked to see a little bit more variety in the theming, but it is still nice, it is still relevant, and I'm pretty sure Grant is the only gym leader in the entire game who only uses Kalos Pokemon. So I guess we'll take what we can get. It's a pretty easy gym fight though. Like I said, Amora has terrible stats, so we get rid of it pretty easily. Tyron's proves to be a little bit more difficult, but not enough to be concerning. I still won. I just had to work for it a little bit. Before carrying on with the journey, I decided to go back to Route 8 and catch myself an Inkay. I didn't use Inkay. Inkay and Malamar are dark psychic type squids that are all about inversion, so much so that Malamar's design is an upside down squid. But their biggest claim to fame is having quite possibly the silliest evolution method in the entire series. All you have to do is get your Inkay to level 30 or higher, and as soon as it levels up, you turn your console upside down. Doesn't matter if it's your 3DS, if it's your phone, if you're playing on Pokemon Go, if it's your Switch, you're playing on that. Just turn your console upside down when you level up Inkay past 30, and it will evolve into Malamar. It has to be upside down. It's so stupid, it's so dumb. And I love it. On my way back through Silage City, I also visited this cafe and spent 5,000 Pokédollars for a nice seat. It didn't come with anything. There wasn't any interesting flavour text or conversation or even a nice view out the window. Like, what's the point in this? You don't get anything out of it. There's no nice view, there's no trainers to battle, there's no items in any of the cafes you can visit. It's just pointless. Moving on through Route 10, this is where I catch one of the most popular Kalos Pokemon in general, Hawlucha, a fighting flying luchador with the signature move Flying Press, which is also the first dual type move in the game. Hawlucha is also just a really good Pokemon, so I named her Carla, added her to the team, and got rid of Clive. I don't need another flying type. Route 10 also has these ancient stone structures that are said to be graves of Pokemon that died in the war of 3,000 years ago. There are also some Team Flare members here, but they aren't really doing anything suspicious. At least, nothing more suspicious than they usually are. It is kind of weird that they're here though. At the end of the path we reach Geosenge Town, where a Team Flare member seems to disappear behind a definitely not suspicious rock. Yep, just a normal rock. There's nothing to see here. Why would there be? People just disappear all the time, it's fine, it's nothing. Shut up, be quiet. Right now there's not really anything here for us aside from the Pokemon Center, so I heal up my Pokemon and head out to Route 11. But not before Karina skates up to us again. She notes that one of her Lucario really does like us for some reason, probably some aura bullshit, but we have a cheeky little battle with her before carrying on through Route 11. Route 11 is very short and there are these little crystals jutting out from the floor that feel like they're gonna lead to something, but they don't really lead to much. This is also where we can find Dedenne, X and Y's Pikachu clone. It's not the best Pikachu clone, it's not the worst, it's fine. It has a fairy typing which gives it a huge advantage, but it's a Pikachu clone, there's not a whole lot here. But the best part about Route 11 is probably the part that technically isn't Route 11, it's Reflection Cave. We have to pass through here to progress, and it actually has a really cool little gimmick to it. A lot of the crystals on the walls here are polished to a mirror sheen, and because they're mirrors, that means that trainers who are waiting to battle you can see you in the reflections. So even if they're facing away from you, you can still be spotted and forced into a battle. It's nothing groundbreaking or exciting, but it does keep you on your toes. Reflection Cave is also where I got my first Pokemon that can Mega Evolve, when my Ivysaur evolved into Venusaur. Except, I can't Mega Evolve it. Not yet, at least. So, let's fix that. So, first question, what even is Mega Evolution? Well, Mega Evolution is, for starters, the first of the series' generational gimmicks. Your Z moves, your Dynamax, your Terrestrialization, all of it started here with Mega Evolution. What Mega Evolution does is it allows certain Pokemon to undergo a temporary transformation for the duration of a single battle, and that transformation gives them an extra 100 onto their base stat total. They can gain new types, new abilities, and it can turn previously completely forgotten Pokemon into absolute powerhouses. As soon as Generation 1 came and went, everyone forgot about Kangaskhan. They just thought, oh yeah, cool parent Pokemon. They raised suspicious questions whenever anyone bred it and it had a baby already. And that was basically Kangaskhan's entire contribution to the series, up until X and Y, when Kangaskhan got a Mega Evolution and an ability exclusive to Mega Kangaskhan that lets it hit twice. Mega Kangaskhan was widely considered one of, if not the best Pokemon in the X and Y competitive scene. And Kangaskhan wasn't the only Pokemon that got this sort of upgrade from a Mega Evolution. Beedrill got a Mega Evolution that min-maxed all of its stats, so instead of just being another crappy early game bug type that you replace after the second or third gym, it became a glass cannon that could deal serious damage against some of the best Pokemon in the game. It was never going to win you an entire battle, it was never going to sweep, but it still became a threat. And I love what it does for Pokemon. I love how it brings new light onto older, previously kind of forgotten Pokemon. Sure, a lot of already popular Pokemon got them, but that just made them more interesting anyway. So yeah, I think it goes without saying that, in my opinion, of all the generational gimmicks Pokemon has had, Mega Evolution is without a doubt the best, and it isn't even close. We enter Shalour City directly from Reflecting Cave, and the whole area has this ancient and mysterious vibe to it, aided in large part by the Tower of Mastery which looms at the shore. But aside from the tower and the gym, there isn't really anything else in Shalour City. Just 4 houses and some NPCs which give us some exposition and a few items. That's it. Along the shore we meet up with Trevor and Tierno, who give me an intriguing stone which they apparently got from a wandering stranger. I'm sure this will be important for something. Probably. It seems important. So after exploring the only 4 houses in the city, I head to the Tower of Mastery, where the group all comes together and meets with a man known only as the Mega Evolution Guru, which is a bit of a mouthful. He's also the grandfather of Karina, the city's gym leader. Unfortunately though, he only has 1 Mega Ring, but the only 2 members of the group who are even interested in Mega Evolution are myself and Serena. So now we have our first rival battle to determine who actually gets the Mega Ring. I actually quite like how the first rival battle in the game is something that's built up to. It has some stakes to it. It's not just a random skill check that's thrown in there, it actually kind of means something. Though later battles in the game do fill the purpose of just simply being a skill check, but that's fine. especially now that the build-up has paid off. But after winning the battle, we still don't get our Mega Ring just yet. I need to go and defeat Karina in a gym battle. Karina's gym is a fighting type gym that takes place in a roller rink. The puzzle here isn't really a puzzle, you just have to battle the other trainers in the gym before you can battle Karina. And the fight against Karina herself was made incredibly easy by the fact that Numa is a ghost type, and her first Pokemon couldn't do anything to combat me. So I just had Numa set up with Sword Stance and then sweep the whole of her team. So I won the rival battle, I won the gym battle. Now all I have to do is ascend the Tower of Mastery and retrieve my Mega Ring. At the top we once again meet with Karina and the Guru, who gives us our Mega Ring. But at this point in the game you might not have any Pokemon that can Mega Evolve. So to teach you about Mega Evolution, you actually get given one of Karina's Lucario, and then you use that for the tutorial battle. Being given a Mega Evolution makes sense. It's the big gimmick, they want you to at least know how to use it. The problem, however, is that Mega Lucario is fucking busted. It is without a doubt one of the best Pokemon in the entire game, and you can very easily have it carry you for the rest of the game. It can trivialize a game that is already too easy. Immediately after the battle, I put Lucario in the PC. Not because it would make the game too easy, but because I already know exactly what Mega Evolution I want on my team. Conveniently, the route immediately after Shallow City, Route 12, hosts Mareep, one of my favourite evolutionary lines in the whole franchise, and Mareep evolves into Ampharos, which also gets a Mega Evolution. So that seems like a good shout for the Mega Evolved Pokemon I can have on my team. Yep, sounds like a good idea, but there's more. See, I really like the colour pink, so much so that it's my favourite colour. And what colour is Shiny Ampharos? Yeah, I'm absolutely shiny hunting. Plus this will give me a good opportunity to actually discuss what shiny hunting is like in X and Y, because it did make quite a few considerable changes for the series. Pokemon X and Y are arguably the beginning of the devaluing of shinies. For starters, the odds of finding a shiny here were doubled from prior games. Up until Black and White, the odds of finding a shiny Pokemon were 1 in 8,192, but from X and Y onwards, they're only 1 in 4,096. But then we factor in Horde battles, which has 5 Pokemon at a time, essentially dropping the odds of finding a shiny Pokemon per encounter to 1 in 814. Don't get me wrong, it's still less than 1%, but it's a lot more manageable. Hell, it's just over 10 times more likely than a standard shiny was in any prior game. So I just spent the next day or so triggering Horde battles on Route 12 with Sweet Scent, hoping that one of them would give me that shiny pink sheep I desired. If I was doing anything, I would also be hunting. Playing other games, bathing, watching TV, pissing. If I had a hand free, then I was using that hand to hunt. And it all paid off pretty quickly, as whilst my friends and I were being disappointed by Jeff Keighley at Gamescom, she finally showed up. She's pink, she's beautiful, she has the worst possible nature for a Mareep to have, and her name is Shella. But it wasn't enough to just catch the shiny pink sheep. No, I had to make Shella the best Shella that she could be. And thankfully, X and Y added a new feature that helps me to do that. Super Training. Super Training is a way to increase and manage your Pokemon's effort values, or EVs for short. Other people have gone into this in more detail, but in short, it's what determines your Pokemon's stat distributions when they level up. Up until now, you could really only get EVs for your Pokemon by battling certain types of Pokemon with them, or by giving them stat boosting items like calcium, iron, zinc, all those ones. And there wasn't really a way to properly EV train your Pokemon conveniently until now, so this was a very welcome addition. That being said though, it is not perfect. You can manage your Pokemon's EVs by taking them through Super Training, which is accessed via the touchscreen anywhere on the overworld. Your first time doing it, you get a tutorial that lasts way too long, but it does give you the gist of what you have to do. In short, shoot the marked spots on the balloons, dodge the attacks, get enough points in the time limit, and you win. Then your Pokemon gets some EVs in whatever stat you were training for. Each stat has a different evolutionary line to fight against, so Special Attack has the Magnemite line, Defense has Geodude, and so on. It starts off slow, but once you've cleared every stage at least once, you unlock Intermediate difficulty. And then the same again gets you Advanced difficulty, which gives you the most EVs for winning. It took me about 2 hours to max out Shella's EVs in Special Attack and HP, which is far too long, but at least it's here. So just pick a stat that you want to focus on and play the minigame until you're happy with how the chart looks. For winning each minigame, you can also get different punching bags to further increase each of your Pokemon's stats, but some of the punching bags also have different effects as well. You can get double up bags, which double the amount of EVs you get from the next time you compete in Super Training. There are also reset bags, which just reset your Pokemon's EVs completely, allowing you to respec your Pokemon, which is a very nice addition. Like I said earlier, Super Training is not perfect. It's slow, it's boring, getting useful items from it is almost entirely luck-based. But at the same time, it did still make EV training a lot more accessible for people. So it isn't entirely useless, and I am glad it's in the game. But there's one other thing we can do on the touchscreen, and that's Pokemon and me. This is a lot less in-depth. In short, it's a way to interact with your Pokemon and show off the new 3D models. You can pet them, feed them treats, play minigames, and that's about it. I do like that different Pokemon have different spots where they do and don't like being touched, and other little details like getting an electric shock from touching Mareep's wool. It's nice, it's cute. What's more is that playing with your Pokemon here can raise its affection level, which gives you certain bonuses like higher experience rewards, higher crit and evasion rates. But you can also get by just fine without any of that stuff too. So Shell has been caught, trained, blackmailed into liking me. I think it's time to carry on the adventure. Before heading back out, my rival gives me the HM for Surf, and as soon as we get to Route 12, there's this guy who just gives me a Lapras. I guess they wanted to guarantee that I had a Pokemon who could surf here. But that's two pretty good Pokemon given to you in very quick succession. Lapras also gets its own dedicated model for when you use it to surf, which is kinda cool. But also, the required surf section here is like 5 tiles wide. It may as well not even be here. We can branch off later on in the route to explore the optional Azure Bay. I pretty much had to come here because this is where I find the Ampharos to eventually Mega Evolve Shella. There's also the Sea Spirit's Den, but that's just an empty cave with nothing in it. At least, for now. But navigating this area is honestly kind of a pain because of how close up the camera is. It looks nice, but it's not very practical. Route 12 does have some cool stuff going on though. We can ride these Skiddo around to jump over ledges and get some new items. One of those being a shiny stone to evolve Ellie, but I don't use that until a little bit later. This is also where Shulk evolves into Delphox, gaining the Psychic type, which feels like a very strong answer to the 3 firefighting starters in a row. Charlotte also evolves here, but she's still got one more evolution to go before she's perfect. As soon as I reach Coumarine City, I'm contacted by Serena, who challenges me to a battle just outside of the gym. Coumarine follows a similar pattern with the rest of Kalos. It's a nice city, but there's not really anything going on. The marina looks nice, and we can buy incense from the stall here, but there's not really anything else to do. The city is also weirdly split into two sections, with a monorail connecting them. It just functions as a glorified loading screen. There's barely even an animation for it. But we do bump into Sycamore and Diantha here. They say nothing of substance, but they're here. The clifftop area of the city is where all of the important stuff is. The Pokemon Center, the gym. Talking to NPCs, they tell us more about the war from 3,000 years ago, but they also mention a mysterious ultimate weapon that was used to end it. There's also some mention of the region's legendary Pokemon that is said to be in slumber, somewhere secret. Stuff like this really goes a long way towards making the region feel lived in. I just wish that there was more actual stuff to do in the towns and cities themselves. Anyway, gym time. But first, it's rival time. Nothing really interesting here aside from they now have an Absol. The gym is also embedded into the cliffside again, but this time it's focused on grass types and has a vine swinging theme. In practice, it's just a maze that's dressed up differently, and gym leader Ramos goes down easily thanks to Carla. His ace is Go-Goat, which honestly feels really underwhelming, but we'll get to why that is later. Defeating this gym also means that we can use Fly, so I taught it to Clive and headed back to Ambret Town to show off another new feature, chain fishing. At least I tried to show it off. Chain fishing is as it sounds. You fish, and if you hook consecutive fish from the same spot without moving, your odds of finding a shiny Pokemon increase. I remember when these games first came out, and I remember people discovering chain fishing, and I even tested it out when I first discovered it and caught a shiny Staryu in about 20-30 minutes. So I was expecting this to also be quite a fast endeavour. I thought I'd only be here for at most an hour. No, that was not the case. No, I tried for 4 hours to find a shiny Clauncher, and about 2 hours in, that just became trying to find any shiny. I went triple over odds trying to find a shiny Pokemon via chain fishing, but I had no luck. So eventually I just said, fuck it. I caught this Clauncher, and I named it Pain. Quite appropriately, after all the suffering I had to go through to catch it. So I put Pain on the team. I needed a Gen 6 Water-type Pokemon. And to be honest, he sucked for most of the playthrough. I really debated just replacing him with any other Pokemon. But for now, let's just focus on getting back to Lumio City. As we leave Coumarine, Lysander of all people contacts me via the Holocaster. Apparently someone told him that I can use Mega Evolution, and that sparked his interest. This guy is genuinely such a creep. Anyway, some workers outside Route 13 mentioned that there's trouble at the nearby power plant, which would explain the issues in Lumio City earlier. Route 13, also known as the Lumiose Badlands, is a rocky, canyon-like area with harsh winds that can make moving around difficult. It also has similar camera issues to Azure Bay, so I'm not a huge fan of this route. I do try taking this opportunity to level up Pain a little, even turning off the EXP share so he gets more XP, but he just keeps fainting. But I do appreciate that the wild encounters here are done by Pokemon chasing you on the overworld. It's one of the earliest examples of encounters working how they do in the more recent Pokemon games. Whilst exploring the Badlands, I eventually stumble upon the power plant, which was being very poorly guarded by a single Team Flare member, so I managed to get inside just fine. Turns out that shock, Team Flare took over the power plant, and they're using it to siphon energy away for their own mysterious use. This isn't really much of a dungeon, it's just a circle with some Team Flare grunts, ending in an admin battle. But what is great about this section is the music. Well, now that that's sorted, the power should be back on across the whole of Lumiose, so I can carry on as normal. But right as I'm about to return, I encounter an absolute tower of a man right outside the city gate. He just makes some vague comments about a flower Pokemon with eternal life before walking off. I don't think it's anything important. He didn't even seem to notice that I was there. Inside the city, we meet up with Shauna again, and we head over to the Prism Tower, which is also the Lumiose City gym. And we get there just in time to see the gym leader Clement turning the lights back on with his little sister. It also turns out that Shauna knows them. This is only ever relevant once in the whole game. It may as well not even be here. The gym itself is focused on electric types, and it's a typical quiz game gym. We do still have to battle a trainer if we get the question right though. We just have to make sure we battle the correct one. Clement, like every other Kalos gym leader so far, is kind of a pushover. His ace and his only Kalos Pokemon is Heliolisk, but its moveset sucks way too much for it to be a threat. A common theme with gyms in this game. Once we leave the gym, we get a call from Professor Sycamore telling us to meet him at Lysander Cafe. That's right, Lysander has his own cafe. When we get there, we're told that Lysander is apparently thought to be a descendant from the Kalos region's kings of old, but the exact records are lost and broken, so it's only speculation. This doesn't stop Lysander from doing more genocidal dog whistling, while Sycamore just watches, laughs it off, completely unfazed. Oh, I bet he votes Democrat. Let's just leave. I'm told to go meet up with my friends on Route 14 as soon as I'm ready to progress the game, but Lumiose City is completely open to me now. I can go and explore wherever in the city. It would be a waste not to, especially when Kalos' identity is so linked to Lumiose City. It was a large part of the marketing for this game, and it's so integral to the region that the Kalos Legends game is set entirely within Lumiose City. The main attractions throughout Lumiose are probably the shops and the restaurants. Some of these are still locked away from you until you're stylish enough, which is a hidden stat that goes up based on doing stuff around Lumiose. We can still visit a good amount of places though. The Pokeball Boutique is a guaranteed place to get a variety of special gimmick Pokeballs. I mostly just buy Quick Balls here though because they're just so silly and I love them. Some of the staff at the cafes can help by giving you directions to various other attractions in the city too. The restaurants are a lot different though. They involve a battle challenge where if you win in the right amount of turns, you'll get a bonus amount of mushrooms which you can sell for a profit. You can only challenge each one once per day though. The rest of the stores just offer some typical stuff you'd find in, say, the department store in prior games. Just now it's spread out across a whole city. But as you're traversing the city between shops, you can run down alleyways and battle some trainers here. One of them even helped me evolve Pain. The outer streets of the city have some more interesting buildings as well. There's the art gallery, which displays various artworks, some of which we recently got to see in high resolution thanks to the massive Giga leak that happened earlier this year. But perhaps the most famous occurrence here is the Lumio City Ghost. I want to like Lumio City more than I do, but the lack of camera control and the fact that the game's movement is very clearly not built for this really drags it down. You're constantly just bumping into walls or entering buildings that you didn't mean to go into because the game's controls just can't handle this place. But worst of all, there just isn't really a whole lot to do here besides some specialist shops and battling in restaurants. But that's not really all that big of a deal. Department stores have had most of that in all of the previous games. So there's a lot of potential for Lumios. I am excited to see how ZA builds upon it, but here there just isn't really a whole lot. So with all that, let's just carry on and head over to Route 14. Route 14 has a rainy autumn vibe that feels not just distinct from every area in the game so far, but pretty much every other area in the series, even the ones with similar gimmicks. Right at the start of the route, the friend group all meet up by this playground, have some battles, and decide to head further along the route, as there are rumours that a haunted house is nearby. Though that just turns out to be some random guy with some scary stories. And some vague threats as well, when it turns out we don't want to pay him any money. This is why you always get cash up front. In Route 14 I kept my EXP share off. From this point onwards I turn it off and on at quite a few points throughout the rest of the playthrough. The balance is really awkward in these games. If you turn the EXP share on, then it doesn't take very long for you to start steamrolling through everything as you get progressively over-leveled. But if you turn the EXP share off, then it doesn't take very long for you to start lagging behind in experience and having to grind. Game Freak clearly balanced these games with the EXP share in mind, but at the same time, they also didn't do a very good job. But poor balancing doesn't stop me from reaching Laver City, which is quite possibly my favourite city in the whole game. Laver City has the vibes of a hidden Fey village, and the music complements that really well. The Fey village theme is very appropriate too, as the gym here is a fairy type. The gym itself is even inside a giant tree. So I update my look, I explore the city a little, and just to the north I find the Pokeball factory. Though I can't go in there yet, as there's a Team Flare grunt blocking the entrance. So I may as well go and clear the gym first. The Laver City gym is a typical teleportation maze, but the theming is very fun, with the layout being vertical and the rooms all being arranged to make for a child's dollhouse. The gym leader Valerie is a fashion designer with a lavish outfit to match. She's also low-key kind of transition goals, like, hello. Look at this queen. Again, she only uses one Kalos Pokemon, Sylveon, but the fairy type being new here does at least make her other two Pokemon a bit more interesting. At least it did back in 2013 when these games first came out. So with the gym cleared, we're invited to join the friend group on a tour of the Pokeball factory. So, I guess Team Flare are gone? Team Flare are not gone, but the one guarding the door does chase away our friends, giving me the perfect opportunity to just walk in. Inside the factory is a very linear conveyor belt maze and a bunch of Team Flare grunts, but more importantly, it has the same music as the power plants from earlier. Team Flare has the staff locked in the break room, but luckily they can heal our team whilst we're in there. Then all I have to do is head into the boss's office and fight a few admins to get rid of the infestation. As a reward for getting rid of the Team Flare problem, the factory's boss gives us a Big Nugget and the Master Ball. Honestly, out of every time you're given the Master Ball in the series, this one feels like it makes the most sense, it being a Pokeball factory and all. Upon leaving the factory, we receive a Holocaster news report informing us that nobody knows who took over the factory, but that supplies in stores should be fine, which is weirdly convenient. Suspiciously so. Route 15 continues with the autumn vibes, this time with leaf piles on the pathway that can hide items, Pokemon, and even other trainers to battle. Much like real life though, it's just really fun to run through them, and the risk of running through them is absolutely worth it. There are also a lot of old ruined buildings here, which could have been a good opportunity for a sort of urban exploring thing, though the only one we can enter is the Lost Hotel, and there isn't really anything for us yet. I can get a little far into the basement, but apparently I'm just not stylish enough to go any further. Once we arrive in Dendermill Town, the season turns from autumn to winter as the snow falls on this quiet seaside town. Sycamore shows up and tells me a little bit about the legend of Xerneas, before Trevor then appears and invites me to go and check out the Frost Cavern to the north. Dendermill Town is one of the small rest stop towns in the game, instead of cities with big events going on. Kind of like Lavender Town from Red and Blue or Celestic Town in Diamond and Pearl. It's got this big solar windmill, the Move Deleter and Move Reminder are here, but the main appeal is the Frost Cavern, so let's head there. Bizarrely, the outside area leading to the cavern is called Frost Cavern. All that's really out here is 1 or 2 trainers and the small area we can surf on, but I just kind of ignore that and head straight for the cavern itself. Though on the way there we hear sounds of a Mamoswine acting out, so I guess that's what we're going to be investigating. Inside the cavern are some typical ice sliding puzzles, but they are enhanced this game with it being the first one in the series with diagonal movement. This is also where we can find the region's new ice-type Pokemon, Bergmite. He's just a little guy who evolves into a big guy, but it's still an ice-type, so it isn't very good, though I do have a soft spot for it. At the end of the cavern we encounter some Team Flare members, one of whom looks suspiciously familiar, as they're harassing an Abomasnow. We clear them out, and the Abomasnow even gives us a Mega Stone to say thank you. But something just doesn't add up. Team Flare said that they want particularly strong Pokemon as they're trying to amass money and power to, in their own words, survive. The question is, survive what? Leaving the cavern and going south through Dendermill takes me to Route 17, where I can encounter a Mamoswine and even ride it to get through the heavy snow. Apparently if I had come here before Frost Cavern, the Mamoswine just wouldn't have been here. There isn't really anything else of note on this route. We can catch some more ice-type Pokemon. Mamoswine controls exactly like Rhyhorn, and as soon as we can get off the Mamoswine on the other side of the snow, the path is just clear straight to Anistar City. Anistar City is probably one of the most beloved locations in the whole of Kalos. A giant crystal sundial is one of the region's standout landmarks, and the city itself has some other solar theming too, with all of the houses having solar panels on top of them. I also like the way so much of the city is built hovering over the ocean, but what people love the most about Anistar City, without a doubt, is the music. Whilst we're here we can talk to a local historian to learn a bit more about the region's legendaries. He tells me that around 800 years ago, Xerneas used its power to spread life throughout the whole region, and it's suspected to have played a part in the ending of the war 3,000 years ago. Though, this makes me wonder what happened 800 years ago for Xerneas to need to do that. On to the rival fight in the gym. Shella absolutely sweeps the rival. There's nothing much to say here. The gym, though, is a bit more interesting. The type here is psychic with a cosmic outer space theme. Functionally, it's another basic maze, but it's on a multi-layered sphere that we're moving around as if it's the Mario Galaxy planet. Again, it's not complicated, but it is a fun theming on a classic concept. The gym leader herself, though, Olympia, is an absolute nothing character, kind of like Ramos from earlier. She doesn't say anything interesting, she doesn't do anything interesting, you just battle her and leave. Her team is also a disappointment. Her ace is Meowstick, which you literally just fought on the rivals team. The only other psychic types introduced in Kalos, though, were Delphox and the Inkay line. And Malamar honestly would have been a great addition here, but maybe the devs felt that its dual dark type just wouldn't fit. This fight just doesn't feel very well thought out. Leaving the gym, Serena meets up with me again and tells me that once our adventure is over, she wants to have daily battles with me so that she can be constantly improving, and honestly I've got to respect the drive for self-improvement. But before we can finish this somber moment between friends and rivals, our holocasters start ringing. Everyone's holocaster starts ringing. And when we all answer, a familiar face heralds a warning to all of us. Lysander is warning us, not threatening, warning us that he is about to use the ultimate weapon which ended the war 3,000 years ago to destroy all of humanity except for those affiliated with Team Flare. So, bit of a sudden development. Up to now, we've only really heard passing hints of the ultimate weapon and how it pertains to the war from 3,000 years ago. But now it's just suddenly here. And of all the people to have it, a billionaire, arguably the worst type of person to ever have anything, has it. Serena and I head to Lysander's cafe in Lumios to start the search for him, so that we can try and stop him. Inside the cafe, we find the entrance to Team Flare's secret lab, and we fight Lysander immediately, which I really didn't expect. After the battle, we hear about some of his motivations, like how he tried to save the world of his tech companies, but that just couldn't stop people from destroying the planet anyway. So he tried to destroy them instead. As we move deeper and deeper into the base to try and put a stop to his plans, we have to navigate a spinning tiles and teleporter maze to try and get to the end so we can shut the power off. As you talk to Team Flare members throughout the base, you learn that they've been spying on people's holocaster conversations. They do own the company that makes them, so that makes sense. They also acknowledge that firing the ultimate weapon will likely kill all Pokémon. These writers really had no idea how ahead of their time they were. Traversing deeper into the base, we find the giant man we met at Route 13, except now he's been imprisoned by Lysander. The man, who we now know is called AZ, tells us about how the ultimate weapon came to be. 3,000 years ago, a man enjoyed life with his Floette until it was drafted into the war. That's right, it was drafted into war where it lost its life. Struck with grief, he built a giant machine to draw all life from its surroundings and give him and his Floette eternal life, bringing the Floette back to life in the process. But grief doesn't just go away in an instant. More people and more Pokemon were going to be killed so long as the war continued, and so he turned the machine into a genocidal weapon and ended the war himself. His Floette, seeing what he had become, abandoned him, leaving him to spend the rest of eternity alone. All whilst AZ begs us to stop the weapon from firing again. We next see Lysander discussing the plan with his head scientist, Xerosic. As Lysander leaves Xerosic to continue the plan, not even seeing me as a threat, he waxes poetic some more about being a chosen saviour and about how my actions will determine the fate of his plan. After a battle with Xerosic, we're then presented with the illusion of choice, and the weapon is activated. The camera cuts to Geosenge Town as we see the stone monument in the centre of the town erupting from the earth, revealing itself to be the tip of the weapon. Now the town is mostly left in ruin with a crystalline harbinger of death looming over it. So now it's time to head to Geosenge Town and enter the secret Team Flare base that was inside of the definitely not suspicious rock from earlier, and battle our way through the base with Serena. I actually enjoy the dialogue with Lysander here. He sees himself not as something good, but more so as a necessary evil. He admits that millions of innocent Pokemon will die, but justifies it to himself by saying that it's better than being slaves to humans. Even when he battles you, he acknowledges that he probably won't win and that it's just to slow you down whilst the weapon charges. So it turns out that this is what Team Flare stole all that energy from the power plant for, but that isn't their only power source. Xerneas, in its resting tree form, is the main source of energy being used, so we have to go down and stop it. It's also never actually explained where they found Xerneas or how they found it. It's just here now. Battling our way through the onslaught of grunts with Serena, and eventually Shauna joining in, is pretty easy. The interior white voids in battles do get a bit boring to look at, though this is a common theme with indoor battles in the next few games, not just X and Y. At the bottom of the base, the door to the weapons chamber is locked, but apparently Shauna just has something that can unlock it. Apparently she got it from Clement. This entire thing may as well not even exist. Like, just leave the door unlocked. There's a whole batch of security goons inside of the chamber anyway. The door doesn't need to be locked. Some of the goons chase Shauna away, so thankfully we don't have to battle all of them. We do still have to battle them though. Once they're taken care of, it's just me and Xerneas. As I approach, Xerneas begins to awaken, freeing itself from the cables that were feeding on its energy, cutting off its supply from the weapon, and facing me in battle. A battle that was incredibly anticlimactic. Naturally, Lysander is quite upset at this. So he shows up again, he battles us again, this time with some weird, fancy Dr. Octopus-like drones that don't do anything, and also a Mega Gyarados. It's kind of weird that this is only the second Mega Evolution that you fight against, and the first one we fought against was just in the tutorial for Mega Evolution. I really hoped we'd get to fight more Mega Evolutions as opposed to just using them ourselves, but I guess not. Anyway, we defeat Lysander, leaving him despairing that mankind is now doomed to a prolonged and self-inflicted end. but the weapon did still charge. Not fully, but it does still have some energy. So Lysander, with nothing left to lose, fires it. Not to kill people. No, he fires the weapon to force immortality on himself and everyone in the chamber with him, so that we will have to watch humanity slowly destroy itself over eternity. Honestly, that plan for revenge goes kinda hard. To be honest, if it weren't for the fact it's barely set up at all, this whole climax would go really hard. But as it is, it just feels incomplete. I don't know, the fact that it all just sort of happens doesn't really help it. And all 4 Lysander fights happen here. They're not spread out like with prior evil teams, they all just kind of happen in the span of an hour. And it all just feels so rushed. Outside, back in Geosenge Town, Trevor and Tierno reveal that they were also here, they were just outside the base helping to evacuate the area. We all make sure that everyone's safe, and then everyone continues with their journey, returning to Anastar City to carry on. But before we can join them, AZ shows up, staring at the remains of the weapon he built, and tells me how Floette left when it learned that others were killed so that it could live forever. AZ, relieved that the past did not repeat itself, then continues to wander, just as he has done for 3,000 years. So with the world saved, I guess it's time to head back to Anastar and head south along Route 18. It's a pretty standard route, with the only things of note here being Terminus Cave and inverse battles, which you can do once per day. Inverse battles have reverse type matchups, which can be confusing at first, but I guess it's neat. Though them only being here and only available once per day makes them feel really easy to forget about and like a last minute addition. Terminus Cave is an optional area that's probably best to explore in the post-game, though I do explore it a little bit now just to grant myself a Duskstone and finally evolve Numa into an Aegislash, which is undoubtedly one of the best Pokemon in Kalos. The main reason being its stance change ability, which allows it to switch between having either really high attack stats or really high defense stats, depending on what moves it's using. Though it can only switch back into shield form when it uses its signature move King Shield, which is just an alternate version of Protect that lowers your physical attack if you use a contact move against it. It's not an awful signature move and it's very fitting, but it's also not too exciting. Eventually I reach Kuraway Town, which is a small mountain village with a river flowing through from the high up mountains. There's also a train station here that we don't get to use. It feels like this was meant to connect to something, but I guess we'll never know now. As we go to leave, Sycamore meets us once again, apologising for turning a blind eye to Lysander's dog whistles and creepy behaviour, which is something he absolutely needs to apologise for, to be fair to him. We then have another battle, this time against the Kanto starter's final evolutions, before carrying on down Route 19. Route 19 feels like a great big valley with a lower area to explore that's full of trainers, marshland and treasure, whilst the top path is the way that we follow to progress through the game as normal. It's the type of route design that I wish there was more of in these games. There are a few routes with larger side areas to explore, but very little on this level. Whilst crossing the bridge across the valley, most of the friend group shows up and we all have battles with each other to see how far we've progressed and grown. The only one who isn't here is Serena, who we're told is training with the Mega Evolution Guru, which certainly sounds promising. Given that there have been very few fights against Mega Evolved Pokemon, I'm really looking forward to finally fighting my rival with a Mega Evolution as well. Once that's all done, Shauna gives us the HM for Waterfall, we never use it once, and then I move on to Snowbell City, where we can find the final gym. It's a nice city with some more wintry vibes, but there isn't too much to be done here, so I update my appearance one last time, head over to the gym, and don't enter it. Unfortunately, Wulfric, the gym leader, isn't here right now, so I have to head to Route 20 to find him. Route 20, or the Winding Woods, is a forest labyrinth that feels like the sort of area you'd normally find earlier in the game. It's not quite a maze, but all of the different areas are disconnected from each other with loading screens, which can make it feel more disorienting than it really is. I don't think the series has really had a forest area like this before, so it's a welcome addition, and there are some good Pokemon to find here. It just feels out of place so late in the game. Upon reaching the end though, we enter a place called Pokemon Village, where we find Gym Leader Wulfric straight away. Turns out that this place is a refuge for lost and abandoned Pokemon, and Wulfric visits here regularly to make sure that its existence remains a small secret, and that everyone here is safe. After seeing that the other Pokemon here trust me, he heads back to the gym and we can go back and battle him. Wulfric's gym has a rotating cylinder bridge puzzle that doesn't really fit the ice type theme of the gym, but it is a fine puzzle. I just use Shulk to win the battle against Wulfric because ice is a bad type, and I wish Game Freak would buff it. He uses Avalugg as his ace, but he has an Abomasnow too, which could have Mega Evolved. It doesn't, but it could have done, and it just feels like another wasted opportunity. So that's all 8 gym badges. And now all that's left is to defeat the Pokemon League. Snowbell City is just a short walk from the entrance to Victory Road, which is just on the opposite side of Santaloon City, where we fought our first gym leader. I really like when regions go in a big circle like this. It's fun, it makes everything feel a lot more natural than just being in a straight line. After showing our badges to the Gatekeeper, we then have to defeat them in battle, which I think is new to this game. It's not very difficult, but it's neat. It makes sense there would be another test of strength at this point, even if the battle is very easy. The entrance to Victory Road itself also feels suitably climactic as the multi-layered doorway opens up to us in a very spectacular manner. Victory Road itself, though, is a mixed bag. I like how it involves you going in and out of the cave, walking through ruins around the mountain whilst you're being dive-bombed by Pokemon flying overhead. And the design of the cave itself is fine, for the most part. There's just one, technically two, really frustrating issues. The very start of the dungeon and the very end of the dungeon require you to use Surf. This is only the second area in the whole game where Surf is required, so this just feels like it's there for the sake of being there. But you already needed to Surf once, so you will probably have a Pokemon that knows Surf, even though that Surf area was only about 5 tiles wide. It was barely even there, it didn't need to be there. Just like how this doesn't need to be here, but you will still most likely have at least one Pokemon that knows Surf. But about halfway through the dungeon there is a single boulder that blocks your way, so that you need to use Strength to push it out of the way. This is the only section in the whole game where Strength is required. Everything else that uses Strength prior to this has been optional side content. It's just such a questionable inclusion, especially whilst HM moves can't be forgotten without visiting the Move Deleter in Dendermill. So I just went back to the PC, grabbed a Pokemon with Strength, and came back to finish the dungeon, which just killed the pacing so much. There's also one final rival fight here, and I was really looking forward to seeing Serena finally use Mega Evolution. She had been training with the Mega Evolution Guru after all. So why doesn't she have a Mega Evolution? Again, this isn't bad, it's just very questionable considering it had been signposted earlier. Anyway, that's Victory Road in Kalos. In any prior game this probably would have been fine, but its design decisions feel at odds with the rest of the game. So, this is it. 4 elite trainers and 1 champion is all that stands in our way, and the hall that leads into this place, and the chamber itself, is suitably foreboding for what lies ahead. As soon as we enter the main hall, we're greeted by Malva, the fire-type user of the Elite Four, and also news broadcaster on the Holocasters, which was owned by Lysander and Team Flare. How interesting. Each Elite Four member has their own chamber which you can battle in any order, just like in Black and White. And each chamber has a fantastic introduction sort of ceremony. My first battle is against Drasna, the Dragon-type user, who has the vibes of a fun ant. Her team had some tankiness to it from Jagalj and Altaria, but Pain learnt Dragon Pulse and Ellie has Moonblast, so it wasn't too much of an issue. Next up is Wickstrom, the Steel-type user who wears a suit of armour and uses the word verily. I like Wickstrom. He went down like a bitch though. Seabold, the Water-type user, provided a bit more of a challenge though. A lot of that was down to Shellher getting confused and his Gyarados using the opportunity to set up with 2 Dragon Dancers. Malva also goes down pretty easily thanks to Pain and his Water Pulses. Honestly, Pain has been a weird team member. Up until this point he's been near useless and I debated swapping him out for just anything else. But as soon as he started learning moves that take advantage of his ability, Mega Launcher, he started really pulling his weight. It just takes until level 57 for him to learn any pulse moves aside from Water Pulse. Another issue I have with the Elite Four in these games is that they only have 4 Pokemon each. In prior games they would all have 5, so now battles just feel like they're over a lot quicker, and they feel a lot less climactic because of it. But there's still one fight left. There's still the big fight left, the champion. And the champion's identity has actually been kept as a secret up until now. Actually, it's less so of a secret, and more it just hasn't really come up. So, I stepped onto the stained glass elevator and descended into the final chamber. It's just fucking Diantha. A lot of people say that Diantha is the worst champion, and yeah, at least at this point she was. I still haven't played Scarlet and Violet, and I hear that Geeta has similar issues, but Diantha is still boring. She's only shown up like twice so far, and when she has shown up, she's not done anything. So this just feels like a bit of an anticlimax. The arena that the battle takes place in looks cool though. I love the Holy Church vibes that the whole Pokemon League building has, and the final chamber feels like a final battle arena. The music here is also okay. It's not the best champion battle theme, but it works. The real disappointment is the fight itself. For once, a boss is using a full team of Kalos Pokemon, unless you count her race, which is a Mega Gardevoir. And it turns out that Pain was a perfect counter to most of her team. Hawlucha, both Fossils and Gourgeist all go down so easily thanks to Pain's Mega Launcher moves. Goodra is a special tank, so it takes a Dragon Pulse and manages to knock out Pain. But then I just switched in Shulk, used it to set up light screens, and had Shella finish it off. She even managed to defeat Mega Gardevoir despite the type disadvantage that she gets when she Mega Evolves. It really was incredibly easy. So that's it. I'm now officially champion of the Kalos region, but that isn't the end of the game just yet. See, not only did we become champion, but we did save the whole region from mass murder. So naturally, a parade is being held in our honour at Lumio City. Everything is all going as planned until AZ shows up once more, challenging the new champion to a battle. The battle isn't anything difficult. I like that he uses ancient Pokemon, matching his age of over 3,000 years, but it's over quickly. He only uses 3 Pokemon after all. After I win, he smiles for probably the first time in centuries, if not millenniums. And then, as he does, some sparkles fall past his face. He looks up, and we see his floette descending into his hands, birthing a meme, and everyone is suddenly weirdly happy for the man who blindly killed thousands of people. But he has his friend back, so I guess that's fine. Credits? Okay. Like, it feels like an appropriate climax, but it still feels weird that we're meant to be happy for the man who committed genocide. But everyone knows that reaching the credits doesn't mean you've reached the end of the Pokemon game. Pokemon games normally have quite an expansive post-game, and X and Y also has a bit of a post-game, and I'll be looking at that shortly. But for now, what did I think of the main campaign of X and Y as a whole? It's fine. It's just fine. Kalos has some really good new Pokemon, but very few of them are major standouts. The biggest problem that Kalos' new Pokemon have isn't even that there are so few of them, but with how poorly they're distributed. There are 3 Grass-type lines introduced, 4 if you include starters, but 2 of them have Ghost as a secondary typing. The only Ground-type Pokemon introduced in Generation 6 are Diggersby and Zygarde. The only Bug-type Pokemon introduced are from the Scatterbug line. Why do Rock and Dragon types both get 4 new evolutionary lines, 5 if we're including legendaries and mythicals, but Poison only gets 1? It just feels so weirdly imbalanced. The problem with new Pokemon in X and Y isn't that there are so few of them, but the fact that there are so few compared to how many older Pokemon are in the game makes those problems stand out so much more. And the lack of new Pokemon compared to prior games was probably done so they could put those resources towards things like Mega Evolution. And at the time, and even now, I do think that is a worthwhile trade. But that doesn't mean it's free of issues. Mega Evolution's implementation into the story also just feels so lackluster. You only fight 3 of them throughout the whole game, and 1 of them is during the tutorial. They really couldn't have given one to a gym leader or 2. You couldn't have fought Sycamore again, but this time one of his starters uses Mega Evolution. It just feels so lacking. And again, it is just so strange how the game signposts that your rival has been training for Mega Evolution, but then at the final rival fight in Victory Road, they don't use any Mega Evolutions at all. It just feels like the developers didn't have enough faith in Mega Evolution to have you battling against them. Speaking of the rival though, or rather the whole friend group in general, they're another source of contention for fans of X and Y, and haters of X and Y, and honestly I get the complaints. At the worst, they're just boring. Again, Trevor and Tierno are complete nothing characters they're just not even characters, they're a single character trait, and that's it. Your rival is also kind of bland. Their only motivation is just they want to grow stronger and be better at battling. They don't really talk much about wanting to be the champion or anything. They just want to be a good trainer. The only one with any real discernible character is Shauna, and that discernible character comes entirely from the fact that she doesn't really know what she wants from life. But the game also doesn't know what it wants from her, and so nothing is ever really done with this. The times when you bump into your friends are quite frequent, but they're not like in Sun and Moon where it's really long and drawn out and you just want to get back to playing the game. They're usually quite short interactions, albeit nice ones, but they don't kill the pacing. The best implementation of the friend group is at the very start in Santalune Forest, where you're running around and exploring the forest with them. More areas, more scenes like this would have been really good, but instead we're just teased with something that we never see again. Weak characters is a theme that's consistent throughout the whole of X and Y. Really, the only character that's decent is Lysander, but he's heavily let down by the climax being just so rushed. Really, the whole Team Flare plotline is rushed. There's barely any setup when they do show up, and most of what you'll know about Team Flare happens during that climax. There's also AZ, who has the foundations of a good character, but we just simply don't get to interact with him enough to really like him or dislike him. And again, it's really weird that everyone seems fine with the man who murdered thousands. That's the gist of everything that happens before the credits. Now let's take a look at what happens after. When we load the game back up, we're back at home, as is normally the case with Pokemon games, and we're told to go and visit Professor Sycamore at Lumio's train station. But as I leave my home, I'm greeted by a familiar face, as Shauna has shown up to make a trade offer. Whatever starter Pokemon she chose, for literally any Pokemon I have. That's a pretty good deal. I like when you're given an in-game way to receive other starter Pokemon, even if it's not all of them. At the station, I meet up with Sycamore, who gives me a rail pass, which will take me to Killoud City in the south of Kalos, and his assistants also give me access to the National Pokédex. So we jump on the train, head to Killoud City, and as soon as we arrive, we're now given the Versus recorder to rewatch Versus battles. We can't do this anymore because online servers were shut down, but that's all the miscellaneous new stuff being given to us out the way. Now, I'm free to explore the subtropical Killoud City. And there are a few things to do here, the first of which is Kalos' only battle facility, the Battle Maison. This is a very, very standard battle facility. It's essentially just like the Battle Tower in previous games, for better and worse. You've got your standard battles, reach a high enough win streak, and then you can fight the facility leaders. Reach an even higher enough streak and you can battle them again, but they have legendaries on their team. You win points for winning battles, and then you can spend those points on battle items. Again, it's basic, it's fine, but it does suck that it's the only one there is here. Another big feature of Killoud City is the Friend Safari, Kalos' very unique take on the Safari Zone. In prior games, the Safari Zone would be this big open area with lots of interesting, rare and unique Pokemon to catch. The Friend Safari is a lot different. Instead of that big open area, it's just one single small grass patch. And instead of being able to catch all sorts of rare and unique Pokemon, you can only catch 3 very specific Pokemon. But what makes it interesting is how those 3 Pokemon are determined. The reason it's called the Friend Safari is because everyone on your friends list will be assigned a different type, with 3 Pokemon of that type assigned to them, and the game assigns them based on your friend code. So each person will have their own friend safari that they can share with other people, knowing what they have. So when you enter the friend safari, you select which friend you want to use upon entry, and then you can catch those 3 Pokemon. This meant that for a while, everyone was just sharing their friend codes with each other, trying to get as many different Pokemon as they could. And it was made even better by the fact that in the friend safari, you could catch the starters. You could get all of the Kalos starters and all of the Kanto starters. And that was made even better by the fact that Pokemon in the friend safari could have their hidden ability. The friend safari was great, but 3DS online servers shut down a few years ago. So now you can't access them anymore. So I couldn't really show this off. So fuck me, I guess. Killout City does have one more little feature. At the northernmost part of the city you can find your rival. Remember earlier when they said they wanted to have daily battles with you after your adventure? Well, this is where they happen. Once per day you can battle them, and now their Absol can Mega Evolve. Which would have been nice during the Victory Road battle to make it interesting, but at least you do get to fight another Mega Evolution. But this is the only other Mega Evolution in the game we get to fight outside of playing online with our friends. After we defeat our rival here for the first time, they give you an Absolite, which is nice, and then they tell me to go and meet Professor Sycamore over in Anastar City. When we arrive at Anastar City, I head over to the big crystal sundial, which is where I meet up with Professor Sycamore, and he upgrades my Mega Ring so that I can now find Mega Stones in the overworld. Up until now, the only Mega Stones you could find were simply given to you, but now I can actually find them myself. So long as the Anastar City sundial is active, which is only between 8 PM and 9 PM. This is fucking silly. I can understand the developers wanting to limit some Mega Evolutions to the post-game, but this is almost all Mega Evolutions. It's a large number, and it really limits your options during the main story. I didn't bother doing this, at least not on this playthrough. It's really just so inconvenient that you can only do it for one specific hour each day, and finding all the Mega Stones, even with a guide, will take you definitely more than an hour. So you're either going to have to split it across 2 days, or just change the clock on your 3DS, which really isn't something you should have to do in the first place. Really, it just feels like an inconvenience for the sake of being an inconvenience. Now, one thing that every Pokemon game has is legendaries. Super strong Pokemon that you can only find one single encounter of per game that are basically boss fights that you can catch. And X and Y has these too. But once again, they're a little bit disappointing. There are 3 legendaries in total. The first of which is Zygarde, the final Pokemon in the trio of box legendaries for Generation 6. To find Zygarde, I head back to Terminus Cave and head to the deepest depths I can get to. If I tried to come this far in earlier, I simply would have been blocked and told to come back when I'm the champion. I tried the Quick Ball strat on Zygarde, but didn't have any luck. I actually messed up the first battle against it because I forgot that I gave the Rocky Helmet to Numa. Luckily, I always save before a legendary fight anyway, just in case something like this happens, and then I ended up catching it in a repeat ball after using up most of my other gimmick Pokeballs. I just think catching legendaries in these things is funny. Sadly, Zygarde doesn't have much going on for it in X and Y. All of the interesting stuff with the different forms and the cells weren't introduced until Sun and Moon. What you see here is all we get. And that is the only other new legendary Pokemon that was added in Gen 6. But we can still go and catch 2 older legendary Pokemon. The first one is Mewtwo, which stands in a cave we can access in Pokemon Village that had a similar block to Zygarde. This one went a bit smoother, but the fight was probably harder thanks to Mewtwo having Recover. I also think it's neat that its battle music is a remix of the red and blue battle music, and once Mewtwo is caught, you automatically pick up one of its Mega Stones, depending on which game you're playing. The last legendary is Generation 6's take on roaming legendaries. It's also a lot less interesting. Once you've received the national dex, you can find one of the Kanto birds, Articuno, Zapdos or Moltres, depending on which starter you picked. I got Zapdos, but whenever you find it, it flies away before you can even act. You don't even get to throw a Pokeball at it. And once you've done this around 10 times or so, it'll fly over to the Sea Spirit's Den at Azure Bay, and you can battle it there just like any other Pokemon. What's funny about Zapdos here though, is that its only attacking move is Discharge, so you can counter it completely just by bringing a ground type with you. And that's all of the legendaries in X and Y. Now I'm fine with X and Y wanting to have fewer legendaries than prior games, especially after Black and White and Black and White 2 just kind of bombarded you with so many. But this feels a little lackluster. There only being 3 and 2 of them being from Kanto just takes away from Kalus's unique identity. So far, the post-game as a whole has been kind of disappointing. What's here isn't really all that bad, it's just that it also isn't all too interesting, and everything that's here has a better alternative in prior entries. There isn't a lot left to keep me playing aside from the Battle Maison, but even that isn't all that interesting either. But there is still one more thing in the post-game I haven't looked at. The Looker Bureau. I'll be honest, I initially wrote an entire chapter about the Looker Bureau, but it just kind of boiled down to me listing what happens. And that's not really all that interesting to watch or listen to. But that doesn't mean it isn't fun to play through. The next time you arrive in Lumiose after getting the National Dex, you're contacted by someone called Looker on the Holocaster, a member of the International Police, and a recurring character from generations 4 through 7. Turns out he's set up shop in Lumiose City and asks you to help with his investigations. It's a fun little adventure, and it feels very reminiscent of the Delta episode and the Rainbow Rocket episodes that would feature in future entries. Taking place entirely in Lumiose City, throughout your investigations you meet Emma, a homeless girl who Looker lets stay in his office, and the 3 of you work to stop a Pokemon thief who's been acting throughout the city. There's some nice stuff in here too that reveals a little bit about what happens to Team Flare now that their plans are over. It even humanises them a little bit when you meet with the Elite Four's Malva. She reveals that she was also a member of Team Flare, which we could have figured out ourselves, but she also mentions that herself and most of Team Flare all believed that what they were doing was right. They genuinely believed it was for the good of the planet. Looker and Emma are also just pretty fun characters to interact with. Overall, whilst this little side adventure isn't anything incredible or groundbreaking for the series, it is still just something nice, and I am glad it's in the game. X and Y are perfectly fine Pokemon games, but they suffer from a big issue that nothing else in the series does. Red and Blue have Yellow, Ruby Sapphire have Emerald, Diamond and Pearl have Platinum, Black and White got full-on sequels. X and Y have nothing. Even Sun and Moon got Ultra Sun and Moon. Sword and Shield and Scarlet and Violet might not have gotten their 3rd game, but they did get DLC instead. X and Y didn't get anything like that. With Generation 6, with Kalos, this is it. When people talk about how good the Hoenn games are, they're talking about Emerald, because Emerald was able to iron out most of the issues that Ruby and Sapphire had, even if it did introduce some issues of its own, Wallace. The original Diamond and Pearl fucking suck. They're slow, the type distribution is terrible, so you don't encounter any fire type that isn't your starter until after the 7th gym. And a good chunk of the new Pokemon are locked behind the post-game. But in Platinum, most of those issues, even if they're not fixed, are at the very least addressed. They're improved. X and Y does not get a chance to improve. There was no Pokemon Z to try and fix what X and Y did wrong, and that feels so disappointing. Especially now that we know there were talks about doing a Pokemon Z, but instead they jumped straight to Generation 7 with the Alola games to try and capitalise on Pokemon's 20th anniversary and do something that seemed bigger. And some of the ideas that they planned on implementing with Pokemon Z were shoehorned into Sun and Moon, but they just feel out of place there. But luckily Kalos is getting another chance. I'm recording, writing and doing most of the editing for this video before Legends-Z-A comes out. I'm hoping I can get it out before it comes out, but we'll see how that goes. But everything we've seen about Legends-Z-A, the returning characters, the new Mega Evolutions, the whole new battle system, it all looks promising, and it shows me that Kalos is finally getting some long overdue respect. Some people might consider what I'm about to say to be a hot take, but I will die on the hill that Kalos deserves a Legends game way more than Sinnoh ever did. Kalos needed something to flesh it out more. And it may be happening about 10 years too late, but I'm glad it's still happening. Are X and Y the worst Pokemon games? No. Are they the best Pokemon games? Absolutely fucking not. No, that would be absurd. But they do hold a special place in my heart. They came out right after I'd finished high school, and it was through these games that I made a lot of friends after high school. We would just hang around, battling with each other, trading with each other, and I had so much fun. Mega Ampharos, one of, if not my all-time favourite Pokemon, was introduced in this game. The Fairy type is such a massive staple of the series now, and Mega Evolution was just such a fresh, new mechanic to be introduced into the series. So if you're just curious or wanting to go back and replay these games, it's worth a shot. You're not going to have your mind blown, you're not going to be completely wowed by everything, or really anything that happens in these games, but they're nice, they're pleasant. The Kalos region is a nice region to look at and explore. It's not extravagant, which it really feels like they wanted it to be, but it's just a chill time. And having recently played Sword, I can't really say the same of it. So if you're just looking for an easy Pokemon game to play through, I'd honestly recommend X and Y. They're not challenging, but they're just a nice, comfortable game to play. And sometimes that's really all you need. Pokemon X and Y were the beginning of what the series would become, for better and absolutely for worse. And they're definitely not the best Pokemon games. But I look back on them fondly, and they were absolutely worth my time.